Bienvenidas a la sesión La mirada de Éric Falardeau. Tenemos con nosotros hoy al director canadiense Éric Falardeau, así como, a José Miguel Rodríguez, de Dioses y Monstruos, que llevarán la sesión. La sesión será traducida por Antoni Boadas, lo tenéis también aquí, y primero veremos los cortometrajes y después seguiremos con la charla con Éric. Quiero presentar a Éric y quiero también ofrecer a José que haga una presentación del director y luego seguiremos con los cortos. Éric, por favor.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for being here. My name is Éric Falardeau, so as you said, I'm a Canadian filmmaker. I've directed many short films, music videos, mid-feature film, and the one that I'm most known for is the feature-length Thanatomorphose, which played in Molins, and this year Asmodeus, which played too in the short film section. And I'm glad to be here, so can't wait to talk with all of you.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Éric Falardeau y, como sabéis, soy un director de cine canadiense. He dirigido muchas películas y muchos cortos. Uno famoso que se ha proyectado en Molins de Reyes, Thanatomorphose, y Asmodeus, y estoy encantado de estar aquí.
Hola, bona nit a totes i a tots. Abans de res volia felicitar en primer lloc al Festival de Molins de Rei per aquest 40 aniversari, per aquests 40 anys amb molta potència que han portat endavant i agrair-los molt el fet d'invitar-me a poder estar aquí avui conversant amb l'Éric Falardeau, que és una persona a qui li tinc molta estima, és un realitzador que admiro molt. I no sé si vols traduir, Toni, l'Éric, o no cal.
Good night. Before all, I want to congratulate the Festival of Molins de Rei for its 40th anniversary, and they did it very well. And I am also grateful that you invited me to be able to chat with Éric, which is a person that I hold very dearly.
L'Éric Falardeau jo el vaig conèixer l'any 2013 al Festival de Sitges, quan ell estava presentant el seu primer llargmetratge, Thanatomorphose. Molts i moltes de vosaltres l'haureu vist, i si no heu tingut l'oportunitat de veure Thanatomorphose, us recomano moltíssim que la veieu, perquè crec que és una de les obres de cinema independent de terror més interessants que hi ha hagut en molt de temps. Parlo clarament de cinema independent, hi ha hagut moltes pel·lícules interessants aquests anys, però a mi és una de les meves preferides. De fet, en aquell moment teníem una editorial i una distribuïdora de pel·lícules de terror independent i va ser la primera que vam distribuir en DVD amb molta il·lusió. I bueno, ja ho veureu durant la conversa, però l'Éric és un autor total. És escriptor, és director, és músic, té una banda de música que es diu The Servant, que també us la recomano molt, que l'escolteu, la podeu trobar a Bandcamp, podeu escoltar la seva música, i que a més la seva música sempre és molt important a les seves pel·lis, i especialment en l'últim curtmetratge que ha fet, Asmodeus, ell amb la seva banda han posat la banda sonora de la pel·lícula, i la peça del curtmetratge Asmodeus la podeu escoltar a Bandcamp també. Molt xula, ja ho veureu. Espero que us agradin molt els curtmetratges i que gaudiu molt de la sessió. No sé si tinc molt més temps per dir alguna cosa, perquè ja sabeu que veurem uns quants curtmetratges aquesta nit. Abans de la xarla veurem la petite mort, que és de 2006, després veiem Purgatory, que també és de 2006, després veurem el videoclip curtmetratge de Forest. No sé si és l'ordre, els estic dient, i no sé si és l'ordre en el que es projectaran. Le Cycle, de 2009, o Le Cycle, Éric? Crépuscule, de 2011, i uns trailers de Thanatomorphose. Ja posar la pel·li seria una mica massa. Ja va estar al Festival de Molins de Rei, on va guanyar, a més, un premi. El premi a millor pel·li. Així que res, amb això doncs, jo crec que ja podem donar pas als curtmetratges i ens veiem després a la xarla amb l'Éric. Merci a tots i a totes els que estigueu per aquí connectats.
He d'interpretar el que has dit?
No, no cal, no cal.
I hear something's coming. Is that wolf is howling?
popcorn?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Espero que hayáis disfrutado de los cortometrajes de Éric.
I hope you have enjoyed Eric's short films.
Sí, seguidamente daremos paso a la charla de Éric con José. Lo que quería decir a los espectadores que estén en YouTube, pueden hacer preguntas. Las estaremos comentando con los presentes. También daremos pie a Tony para que haga las traducciones. Bueno, sin más dilación, os doy paso. José.
Okay. Hi again, Eric and Silvia. First of all, I have not said it during the beginning of the season, but Eric is also a director of video clips, and we just seen one, The Forest, that it's a video clip for his music group, The Servant, and also he makes another one for Cuckoo. It's correct, Eric? Yeah. And another one that it's an amazing video clip that I love so much, and I recommend to all of you see it. Is a video clip for the electronic artist Rainbow Trash, and it's called Purgatory. Very colored. It's an explosion of colors. It's very suspiria, very divergent. It's in my opinion, and I think you need to see it right now. And Tony, if you want.
Sí. Hola, lo primero de todo, hemos visto unas películas de Eric, que también es director de videoclips, y el que hemos visto de Forest es un videoclip para su banda, y también ha hecho otros para Cucupé, y que es maravilloso, tenéis que verlo, os lo recomiendo, y otro para Rambo Trash que se llama Pulpo Pulqueiro, que es una explosión de colores y que tenéis que verlo.
So, Eric, I don't know if you want to start saying something or commenting on about a specific topic, or do you prefer that I ask something? And
I can say something. There in the program that has been screened, the 2 video clips that I made for Rainbow Trash and for Cucupé weren't shown. The Rainbow Trash one was shown at Crépuscule, another festivals in Catalonia, and we did old cloud tanks effects for the video, for the colors. So with the aquarium and with the colors in it so we did all special effects for that video clip. The other things really fast that I want to say is that there's one short film that were not screened in the program, and actually it's the first one of my film that played in Spain. It's Coming Home. And why I haven't suggested to screen it, it's more of a horror drama driven one, but since my film are all 20 minutes long, it gets longer and longer. But yeah, so that's it.
El programa, en los 2 vídeos, el de Rambo y el de Cucupé, el de Rambo se enseñó en otro festival de Cataluña y se usaron efectos especiales para los colores y que también quería decir que mi primera película que se estrenó en España va a volver a casa, a mi tierra, y ya, creo que ya puedo.
So I don't know, Jose, how you want to work? I'm following you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I only want to say coming home, it's maybe it's a very long short film, but it's wonderful, and it won the best short in the Crip Show, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, coming home is another one.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I didn't understand it correctly.
Don't worry.
The audio is a bit.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not so good.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry, Tony. After the screening of your new short film, Asmodeus, at the Sitges Film Festival, I know you've been in Berlin with your medium-length film, The Thing from the Lake, and how it goes. It has been received. We didn't saw this piece because it's too long to see it. It's about 40 minutes maybe or something like that. Yeah, but it's very interesting movie because it's a mix explicit sex or porn film, what as you want to say it, with horror films. And you won something in that festival? Or
no, actually.
No?
Do you want like Tony to translate before I go in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vale. Después de la proyección de Asmodeus en Sitges, has estado en Berlín presentando otra película o corto llamado The Thing from the Lake. ¿Y cómo te ha ido? No la hemos visto porque es muy larga, dura unos 40 minutos, pero es una película muy interesante que mezcla sexo explícito con horror. ¿Y has ganado algún premio?
The screening in Berlin was for the Berlin Porn Film Festival because actually there's explicit sex mixed with horror in that film. It's really fun. It was shot before the pandemic, so in the fall of 2019, and it's the first time that I haven't produced the film myself and that I worked with company producers, especially like adult film producers. And what's interesting was that I had kind of a bit like with Pinku Aiga in Japan, like they say, do what you want, but you must have that many sex scenes and you work on that framework. So it was really fun to play with. And actually the film is a film for cinephiles. There's a lot of references to horror films like Creepshow, and the aesthetic was inspired a lot by Jesus Franco. So you know the zoom and also the soft focus, out of focus shots, that kind of framing that worked on the focal length, but on the profondeur. So that means everything that how they are framed in the shot with the forefront object and the object in behind. So it was really cool actually, but it's a film that was less seen because of the adult content.
Vale. La proyección de la película en Berlín fue para el Berlin Porn Film Festival, el festival de cine pornográfico de Berlín, ya que mezcla terror con sexo. Está rodada antes de la pandemia, en 2019, y es la primera vez que no produzco la película yo mismo, y esta vez he trabajado con otras compañías como Alo Films. Y para un cinéfilo, esta película puede ver que hace referencia a otras películas y que la estética estaba inspirada. I didn't catch that. Sorry. Sobre todo en el zoom y en los encuadres y en el focus. Es una película muy interesante, pero que se ha visto menos debido a su contenido adulto.
Okay.
But-
Do you want?
Actually, it's fun too, because from the shorts that have been screened, you can see that sexuality is always a big focus in my films, but also in my books. So it made sense for me to do an adult film at one point, and I always wanted to do one, just I didn't know when. And when they came to me to say, "Would you like to do one?" I said yes.
Vale, también es muy es gracioso porque por estos cortos que habéis visto, se puede ver que la sexualidad es un tema importante en mis películas, pero también en mis libros. Pero que tenía sentido, para mí tenía sentido hacer una película para adultos. Siempre la he querido hacer, y cuando me lo propusieron dije que sí.
Yeah, it makes sense. Much of your work, Eric, is filmed in Super 8 millimeters. And what is the reason? Is a question of style because you love the plastic of the image, or is an economic reason? Is what can you tell us about this?
La película Macho Field Work está filmada en ¿cuántos milímetros? Que no lo he pillado.
En 8 milímetros.
En 8 milímetros, perdón. Está filmada en 8 milímetros, y es una cuestión de estilo porque te gustaba el plástico, creo, o
la plástica,
la plástica, perdón.
Plasticity.
Ya. ¿Cuál es la razón? Si hay una.
Actually, there's two reasons. The first one is that I'm a kid that was raised in the 80s. So most of the film I've seen was on VHS, but it was film shot on film. And most of the film that I really liked were film shot on some film stocks that really were grainy or had specific colors and a tone. Like, for example, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is on Super 16 millimeter. Necromantic is on Super 8. So all these films really influenced me and were the film that I liked. And I like the aesthetic because you play full frame, so you have a square framing, so that kind of put the characters into these boxes. So I think it's interesting in regard of how you express some feelings. And most of my film, people are kind of stuck in boxes. They're stuck in their emotion or stuck in what they live and or their own desires that they cannot really enact and all that kind of stuff. So it made sense on a framing perspective. And for the look, it's not just the colors that Super 8 gives, but it's how Super 8 millimeter do two things. The first one is, since I'm a kid that was raised with film shot on film, it's affiliation. It's a parenthood. It puts my film into kind of my films in the history of cinema. What I mean by that, it's like how things evokes or reminds us of other films that were made before. Asmodeus, for example, I think is the best example, since it's a film that were made in a direct references to the 1910s, 1920s. All the special effects were made like when it was in that time and all that kind of stuff. So film stock was necessary for me to contribute to evoking that time and to get the effect that I wanted. And the other thing is that film stock has distinctive texture. And the texture is really important for me because it can you can play with emotion, with the viewer, how you feel the film, actually, the movie. And since my film talks a lot about bodies, bodies in their environment, stuff that is happening with the bodies, either that it's violent, sexual, or whatever, texture is one of the way to evoke the way that we feel stuff. So for me, it makes the film more. I try to have my film be more tactile by using films. So that's the reason why I did that. Sorry, that was a long answer. I tried to.
En realidad hay dos razones. La primera de las cuales es que yo me crié en los 80 y todas las películas que vi eran en HS, y la mayoría de películas que yo veía de pequeño estaban rodadas en tonalidades verdosas, y el color era el color específico era importante. Por ejemplo, la masacre de Texas. Y estas películas han sido una influencia para mí y su estética. En mis películas suelo encuadrar a los personajes en como cajas, porque es interesante para mí, porque es una manera para expresar sus sentimientos y sus deseos que no pueden llevar a cabo. Un gran ejemplo es Asmodeus, que es una película que he hecho inspirándome en 1910, 1920, y Filmstock para mí es importante que evoque ese tiempo. Luego también la textura es muy importante para mí, porque de esa manera puedes jugar con las emociones, con los que vemos la película, también cómo se sienten los personajes, y también hablo mucho de los cuerpos, y los cuerpos son importantes en mis películas, y la textura es una de las maneras que evoca esto y hace la película más táctil usando film.
José, tenemos una pregunta del público. Me gustaría lanzarla. Además, está relacionada con la anterior pregunta, así que me gustaría. Es directamente en inglés. Eric, is porn the format providing the most freedom to do a horror film too? Or the must-have scenes are too restrictive? Sorry. Do you see a convenient link between horror and porn, maybe? Asking because Joe D'Amato or even Wes Craven taught both genders too, so maybe their freedoms are somehow connected. Tony?
Perdón, es que no me he enterado muy bien el audio.
Sí, la pregunta es si el formato de porno, digamos que facilita, o el género de terror está facilitado gracias a él, a grandes rasgos. Eric?
I think actually it's really interesting to think about these type of film in a broader context, which is what cinema is about, which is about moving pictures with sounds. And when you get with horror and porn, one of the biggest link, apart from all the psychoanalytic stuff that we can take, that we've all heard about, apart from the idea that sex and death are connected because there's two ways to get through time. It's either by creating something that will survive you or by making children that will survive you. So all these aspects are kind of not in subconscious, but everyone like kind of understand or feel that kind of stuff. I think that more than that in film, the interesting point is the way that both genres are focused on bodies in motion. So people like either running because they're gonna get killed or like having sex. There's always bodies in motion. So it's coming back to the idea that we're filming people and we're trying to understand some feelings through how people move or people react. So either it can be fear, desire, and so there's a big, broader ways of looking at pictures and at cinema through that. And the other thing is that since these type of film are horror less now, horror as kind of won its grace with scholars and film festivals. Porn is still another game because of some moralistic way of thinking, but still, I think that these type of film are the only places where you can still be transgressive. Why? Because you can play in the margin, and when you play in the margin, you have some subjects, way of showing stuff that people can still be unused to, and it brings us to one of the things that I find out is the most important with every art pieces is the way that as a viewer, a reader, whatever, you are confronted with yourself. It's yourself that you're seeing in the picture. And when you interpret something, it's yourself that you're seeing. And when you don't like something or you're against something, it talks about yourself. And it's really a kind of almost with porn and horror, a way to deal with that big question, which is who we are, why we are how we are, and all that kind of stuff. And since they are on the margin, they still have the power to be free of imperatives. Like if you're doing, I don't know, an horror film mixing sex, you won't never have that budget. But let's say with the budget of a Marvel film, no, it won't be made first because a lot of people just won't be ready to get like sex in films and some horror stuff. But at the same time, you will get all the constraint of doing something that is mainstream. So it must appeal to as many people as you can. But with horror, porn film, like the audience is the world over. So you can speak to a lot of people, but at the same time, you don't need to speak to the mainstream. Because if you speak to mainstream all the time, what you're doing is not being transgressive and being on the border. And for me, that's the kind of film that are interesting, is the one that are just on the outside. And that makes us think about what is cinema, what we are ourselves, what society are, and they are really freedom space still when you're working in porn and in horror film. Again, a long answer, but...
En realidad es muy interesante pensar en este tipo de películas con un mindset más amplio. En este tipo de películas que mezclan el horror y el porno, la pornografía, el sexo y la muerte están conectados y son unos temas que todos saben cuando ven estas películas. Los cuerpos y el movimiento. Los personajes siempre corren para que no les maten o tienen sexo y expresan miedo, deseos y expresan sus miedos y sus deseos. También creo que este tipo de películas es el único lugar en el que se puede ser transgresor. Y cuando yo pienso, por ejemplo, en las obras de arte, cuando tú las miras y tú las interpretas, las estás interpretando tú mismo. Estás viendo una visión de ti. Y el porno y el horror tratan de quién somos como personas. Y además otro aspecto es el hecho de estar en el margen de la sociedad, de lo que está socialmente aceptado, y trata de eso. Además, un inconveniente es que el presupuesto no suele ser nunca muy alto, no tenemos el presupuesto de las películas de Marvel, y la audiencia no es mainstream, y por el mero hecho de que la audiencia no sea mainstream es lo interesante, porque si haces siempre películas para el público mainstream no estás siendo transgresor, y a mí me gusta estar en las afueras, on the outside, y porque aquí es donde la sociedad es donde está, fuera de la sociedad es donde está la libertad.
Very interesting, Eric. I think looking at your work, I have the feeling that literature or classical sources, mythology, philosophy are very important, and also silent movies, because I think silent movies are very important to you, because all your movies are practic or almost your movies, people don't say any word at all. Would you say that reading or books are the main source of inspiration of your works?
Muy interesante la intervención. Cuando miramos tu trabajo, cuando yo miro tu trabajo, tengo la sensación de que la literatura, la mitología y las películas mudas son tus inspiraciones. ¿Dirías que la lectura o los libros son tu mayor fuente de inspiración?
Well, actually, yeah. My background is literature had a lot of place in my life when I was a kid. Like the first thing that I was doing is like keeping my money instead of lunch to buy books. So I wasn't eating, I was buying books. So it was always like one of the main inspiration for me. And I really think that, especially when you talk about mythology, the text from Occident, like the ancient texts, like can be Lineid, it can be Greek text, it can be all that kind of stuff. Like every stories are told in these books and these mythological stories. So what's interesting is how they condense human passions into single, straightforward, archetypal ways of understanding, but sometimes at a deeper level. Like it might not feel cheesy, but sometimes you can't read like Orpheus and Eurydice, like how they had their love story and she died, goes to hell, and just take it for what it is. But when you start thinking about it, you have a reflection about how you create art, or how love can transcend time, how grief works, how life is unjust, and then you get into all these big questions. But the best part is that everyone, even though some people never read the story, we kind of, it's what Jung called the l'inconscient collectif, the unconscious collectiveness, which is what we all know, because we live in a world where we share the same basic stories. So going back to these kind of texts, for me, it's like important, because you can tap into some stuff really. It's not manipulative, but you can make some emotion felt really strongly, and they talk to basic human instincts, desire, problems, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, they are really like my primary resources. And most of my film ideas, it's a sentence in a book, and I say, oh, there's something to do there, and most of the time it's the end of my film. so afterward I write like on the opposite side. It's not like I have a world and concept. No, it's like I read something, whoa, it will make, imagine the ending will be that, and then I unfold when I write. So it's kind of counterproductive in a way, but that's how I work. And the other thing, it's like the other part of your question about cinema, it's like silent film for me are the true power and of cinema, because again, it's thing moving, is a way of looking at the world. It's not like people explaining all the time what they're doing, what they're thinking, why they do that, and blah blah blah. It's like it's boring stuff for me. What I want is like people to express themselves through actions, and to see that, and silent film, that's how they manage to develop a language that is based not on people talking, but how the work, how the things are done, and how people can reveal themselves through what they do, how they react, how they are dressed, the art direction, and everything, the camera, how the camera moves, why it moves at that moment, why it doesn't. Everything is like part of that language. And the other thing that's fun with not having people talking in my film is that for me, 50% of the film is my images, but the other 50% is sound. Like I spend almost as much time, sometimes more time on sounds design. And it doesn't show necessarily, because sound is kind of, we hear that, it passes, we see visual, we hear sound when suddenly there's a break, there's something that isn't working, there's something that is not normal, then we hear sound in a movie. But the soundtracks for me is like one of the key pieces of expressiveness in cinema. And what I think is lost when we focus on people talking is that we don't focus on designing sounds that matters or that can evoke or make people feel some stuff. So yeah, like silent film, sound, and books, that's pretty much sums it up.
Vale. En realidad sí. Respecto a la primera pregunta, la primera parte de la pregunta de la literatura, la literatura siempre ha sido una parte importante de mi vida. Cuando era pequeño, con el dinero de la comida no comía y me compraba libros. Y creo que cuando los textos antiguos de la mitología griega y romana cuentan todas las historias de la humanidad, y es interesante ver cómo condensan las pasiones humanas en estas historias, como por ejemplo y enseñan que el amor trasciende el tiempo y se hacen las grandes preguntas. Y la mejor parte es que todos nosotros vivimos en un mundo conectado, unconscious collectiveness, y compartimos las mismas historias básicas. Y es ahí donde, cuando vas ahí, puedes sacar las emociones fuertes, los deseos, los problemas de la gente, y por eso la literatura es mi mayor fuente de inspiración. Y muchas de mis películas, sobre todo los finales, están inspirados en libros y en mitología. Y vale. Y la segunda parte de la pregunta respecto al cine mudo. Yo creo que el cine mudo es el verdadero poder del cine, porque al no tener que explicar la gente, cuando no tiene que explicar lo que está haciendo todo el tiempo, eso es aburrido, y se expresan a través de la acción. Y se revelan a ellos mismos a través de sus reacciones y de sus acciones y de cómo se mueven, cómo se mueve la cámara, por qué hace este corte, por qué aquí, por qué allá. Y yo creo que el 50% de la película es imagen, pero es que el otro 50% es sonido. Y muchas veces paso más tiempo dedicándolo al sonido que al diseño. Y creo que la banda sonora es clave en las películas. Y por eso creo que hay que fijarse hay que poner el foco en las acciones y no en el discurso.
And I just say another thing, when you're not relying on dialogue, people speaking, you can also, I think, more easily reach the universal, because you go over what sometimes people perceive as accent, bad acting, which isn't sometimes in some culture, whatever. But like when you speak, there's a lot of things that are really different depending on the culture. And the other thing I want to say is, like, we talk about silent cinema, but it links to my answer about porn and horror films. Because porn and horror films, you don't hear people talking all the time. That's not what they're doing. They try to save their life. They're getting killed. They're afraid. There's suspense, but they're not talking. It's all on how the camera and the sounds create a feeling, a world, make us understand something, make us see things. And it's still a body that moves in space and try to interact with its environment. And porn is the same thing. Porn is amazing because people don't speak most of the time. Well, they do other noises, but they don't speak. And that reminds me of Paul Éluard, which the famous French writer, when he was the lover of Gala, he wrote to her at one time saying about pornographic film, because they have seen a screening, like, it was amazing. It was all these big pieces of body on screen that we've never seen like this, and they're moving, and we discover the world in another way. And most of all, people shut up. They don't talk, and it's wonderful. It's moving picture at its best. So I think it's all interconnected when I think about how I do my films.
Vale. Quería añadir también que al no poner foco en el diálogo, al no darle importancia al diálogo, cuando le das importancia al diálogo, por ejemplo, salen diferentes acentos, actores buenos, actores malos, y cuando hablas, a la hora de hablar, las cosas son muy diferentes dependiendo de la cultura. Y por eso en mis películas no es tanto el hablar, sino la acción. Y también quería añadir que lo que me gusta del horror y de la pornografía es que la gente no habla, hacen otras cosas. En el porno hacen otros ruidos y en el horror no se paran a hablar porque están escapando, están intentando que no les maten. Y por eso creo que cuando me inspiro para mis películas es importante esto. Bueno, y tenía una anécdota de un escritor famoso francés que fue a ver una película pornográfica, creo, y cuando acabó, fantástico, maravilloso, oh, qué bien. Y que está todo interconectado.
Okay. So, Eric, as sex is very important in your movies, in your filmography, but not only sex, the blood and the sexual fluids. What can you instead? You have a thesis about fluids in gory and in porn films. And what can you tell us about the meaning and the importance of the fluids in your work, either as sexual elements or as part of the transformation of the bodies of your character of your movies?
El sexo es muy importante, pero también la sangre y los fluidos corporales. Y además tú has escrito una tesis de fluidos corporales en las películas de terror. ¿Y cuál es el significado de los fluidos corporales y de los elementos sexuales en tus películas?
Yes, it is indeed. I did wrote my master thesis on body fluids and porn and gore film. And 2 years ago, I did rewriting with more chapters, expensive, and to be that was published as an essay. So it's way more fun for people to read because it's not universitary. It's like it's vulgarisé, so it's way more accessible, and there's way more examples and film. So yeah, it's something that's really important for me, and there's many part why and what I can say about that. The first part, it comes back to textures again. I think one of the strongest tool a filmmaker has its in box, sounds and everything that I've talked before, but textures is one of the most important thing, especially in what we call body genre, which is a term coined by Carol G. Glover that was retaken by Linda Williams, which is one of the founder of porn studies. So because they were talking about horror film, porn film, melodramatic film, even like burlesque, the comedy like Buster Keaton, it's the body in action. So for them, like body fluids are some of the fluids that the viewers produce while they're watching to this movie. Either they cry, they're afraid, they sweat, whatever. And also what the character on screen produce. And you don't see that often in films, actually. Like real, not like funny blood spray a la Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead, but not on that kind of burlesque, like grotesque way, but really something that is closer to what the human experience of bleeding or how can I say, coming is. And one of the visual way we can do that in film is by showing like body fluids. So that's one part. And body fluids appeal to texture because blood has a certain texture to it, a certain color, like sweat has a certain textures on bodies. It can be very erotic, and it can also traduce like fear, depending on how you play with it and everything. So for me, it's like, again, it goes back to the viewer sitting and feeling the movie through his own body. So the experience of being in a film. But afterward, there's a lot that can be said on a more maybe a way of thinking about like how horror scenes are built and sex scenes are built around the idea of a climax. So every murder in a movie is like a sex scene in a porn movie because that's what we want to see. We go to see a horror film, we want to see the horror part of it, and that's where filmmakers surprise us or not, and we say, oh, that movie was amazing, I've never seen that before, because he did like something or he played with our expectations. And most of these scenes are constructed like mini tales, because suddenly you have a moment in the story that stops, and for 5 minutes we have a set piece about the murder. And it can be like, you take La Petite Mort that you've seen at the first, which is really that. It's a horror film murder taken from out of a movie. You can put that in another movie, it will work. And we could do a Abel Ferrara driller killer, that they have the same idea. You have that kind of scenes that are independent. You can take them off. And it's constructed, both sex and horror films are constructed the same way. Like most of the time, there's something like penetrating the body, there's a suspense, there's something that will come, so attention, there's the release of tension at the end where it's sprayed, so whatever it's sprayed anyway. But yeah, it's built on the same way on a language level. And afterward, talking about sex and death, again, it's like basic human fear or pleasure and ways to experience the world and keep living in the world. And it goes back to all our basic mythological archetypal, thanks, French coming in, but ways of constructing Occident collective imagination and everything that we wrote or thought about. And it's really interesting then, because again, it speaks in the end about one thing, like our own mortality, how we will deal through life, how we will deal with what we don't want to confront at a moment or another, and that will come to everyone. And that in the end, most of people, it will probably won't be funny, like being on a deathbed, you know, and you will die alone, even there are people around you. And I think body fluids, what they do in films is that they are a way to represent, to show or to think about that in the end. So it might seem a bit like a pueril, which is in English, not adolescent, but sometime easy, or sometime a bit like childish or whatever. But it's not that. It's not, and it's still transgressive, because people don't want to confront themselves to that, and what they like, what they don't like too. You know, when you talk about body fluids, there also that part of us that is like, we all like produce a lot of stuff on our own body, but that's not the stuff that we show. We learn to hide some of them, which is okay, but sometimes when you listen to these films that put that in the forefront, it's like a collective experience that is repressed in life. And it's also more repressed if, for whatever reason, let's say you enjoy seeing that, you enjoy that for whatever reason, and there's a lot to be said there. I will stop, but there's a lot again on that part. So I think it taps into that repressive, transgressive, inner, but also collective way of experiencing life. So body fluids are kind of, are important on that part.
Sí, hice mi tesis de máster sobre los fluidos corporales en el cine y en el gore, y hace 2 años lo reedité y añadí, por ejemplo, más capítulos, y está publicado, y de esta manera es más divertido y más interesante de leer y más accesible, porque hay más ejemplos y más partes. Y sí, las texturas, y sobre todo los fluidos corporales, las lágrimas, el sudor son muy importantes, y porque no se suelen ver en las películas. Y por eso, por ejemplo, nos llevan al clímax, el sangrar o el eyacular, ayudan a crear textura. Por ejemplo, la sangre tiene un cierto color, o el sudor, y ayudan a crear el miedo a los espectadores. Porque, por ejemplo, cuando vamos a ver una película de terror, vamos para ver la parte de terror, la parte que nos gusta, la importante. Y sí, en mis películas, por ejemplo, en la petite mort, el corto que hemos visto, el penetrar un cuerpo, la tensión, liberar la tensión, y están hechas de la misma manera y al final todo vuelve al sexo y a la muerte, porque son típicos, son arquetípicos, y son maneras de construir la imaginación colectiva. Por ejemplo, porque la muerte va a llegar a todos. Por eso me gustaban mis películas hacer hincapié.
Okay. Eric, one of the short films that we've seen, Crépuscule, is dedicated to the memory of Kazuo Ono.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Japanese dancer of Buto, I think, and it was very curious to me, because I didn't know him, and I investigate a little bit about his figure and the Buto, and it's incredible how you make this short film that talks about identity, anxiety, chaos of the creation of, and it's very similar to the philosophy of the Buto, of the dance, of this Japanese dancing. And well, it's not a question. It's, I only love this. The question is how, why, or what. What do you love about animation? Because you did almost 2 short films animated, one with stop motion, Crépuscule, and the other one, well, also with stop motion, I think, but with paper cut. Yeah. What can we explain about your relation with animation movies?
El corto Crépuscule, lo has hecho está en memoria de Kazuo Ono, y me ha parecido muy curioso porque no sabía mucha información sobre él y he hecho un poco de investigación. Y también que tu película, este corto habla sobre la identidad y que es muy similar a su filosofía. Y la pregunta es, ¿qué es lo que te gusta de la animación? Ya que has hecho 2 cortos que son animados.
Your question has 2 parts. The first one about Buto is that in Japan, it's a dance that was developed in the 60s, 70s, and the name that it took, or the nickname that it had, it was the Dance of Darkness. And it's really interesting because it focuses on the body and how the body can express darkness, and like, so for example, like depression, how the world is hard, and it's really like inspired too visually by what happened in Japan with the bombs after the Second World War. So that's why everyone is painted in white, and it's really like grotesque ways of expressing themselves, and the bodies are all distorted. It's really amazing. There's a lot of movies too that use that in Japan in the 70s. So it's really love Buto because of the way it put bodies at the forefront to express inner feelings that aren't like positive feelings, but that can be transcendent too, because you don't always have to experience funny stuff to be happy, I think. And that dance actually inspired the look of the creature in the films. So the kind of angel-like creature. It really was inspired by both like Paradise Lost, Adam and Eve, like all that kind of Christian mythology, but with a drop of Japanese aesthetic that doesn't really like work together, but I think it works in the case of my film. So the character, the angel-like creature, were made based on the Buto, and one of the actresses that we took for the film, even it's stop motion, I had an actress doing motion references of movement. So I shot her, and she took classes with Kazuo Ono in Japan. So the creature movement are based on her movement that we worked together before filming with the puppets. And we had the puppets move like what we had found as a way they should move before the shooting, based on how Buto works. So that's long story short. And another details in Crépuscule is that we did all the movement of camera. We did it like Japanese, when you read and the parchemin, les papyrus, you from right to left. So everything was made to make sense into that particular aesthetic context. So that's part of the question. The second part is that animation has a lot of places in my work. Yeah, we did the forest in paper cuts. but also like Lotte Reniger, Chinese shadows. So it was shot as Chinese shadows with paper. There's Crépuscule with the puppets, obviously. Thanatomorphose, the last scene actually is like stop motion animation à la Hellraiser, like Clive Barker Hellraiser. So it's really like stop motion. So there's always a part of animation. And why? Actually, it's because first of all, since I talk a lot about texture and feeling the film and all that kind of stuff, I love doing special effects in camera most as I can. And doing animation is a way of doing special effect in camera that still works on a magical level, I'd say, because people are still amazed when you animate some stuff. It works for everyone, even myself. It's like, wow, there's something that shouldn't move that moves. Wow, there's something there. The second thing is that it talks too about that idea of being of the filmmaker or the animator as being kind of a godlike figure. And Crépuscule, with its angel and its human, it's really like normal that I did stop motion because it was kind of my world, me as a god, and letting people have their own drama into that with the creature and everything. So for me, it made sense too on that symbolic level, even though it's not directly in the film. But I like stop motion that do that, like the Brothers Quay, Phil Tippett, Mad Gods recently was a bit like that. So yeah, all that kind of stuff. And the last thing, it comes back to texture again. Like you have like really the feeling of something that exists in the world and it works because you feel it, it's there, you know, there's something, and when you animate it, you touch it every frame, you know, there's some a working of the matters, la matière, and so all of these kind of mix together and makes why I love doing animation in my film. And I'm shooting a new music video right now. I will shoot a new music video for a group called Tempête, and we're doing like Muppet à la Jim Henson. So Muppet that will be animated by animators, but live size Muppets and stuff like that. So yeah, I like it.
Vale. Esta respuesta está terminada en dos partes. La primera, que sí, me inspiró mucho en Buto, en el Japón de los años 60, que hicieron una cosa que se llama Dance of Darkness, la danza de la oscuridad, que se especializa se separa en la manera en el cuerpo y la manera en la que el cuerpo puede expresar oscuridad. Y también está inspirado en las bombas de Hiroshima y Nagasaki. La gente está pintada de blanco y es muy interesante. También me inspiro de las películas japonesas de los 70 y sí, me encanta su trabajo porque pone los cuerpos a la primera fila. Y en mi corto, por ejemplo, el aspecto de las criaturas está inspirado, de las criaturas y de los personajes, está inspirado en mitología cristiana, Adán y Eva, pero con un toque de estética japonesa. Y una anécdota interesante es que una de las actrices de la película que estaba haciendo el motion animation, el Buto le dio clases. Y también, quiero decir, en el corto el movimiento de la cámara está hecho al estilo japonés, de la derecha a la izquierda. Y la segunda parte de la pregunta, la animación, sí, tiene un lugar muy importante en mis trabajos y porque me encanta hacer los efectos especiales en cámara y la animación es una manera muy buena de conseguir eso. Y también porque en animación tocas cada frame y por eso me gusta mucho.
Sí, José, tenemos tiempo de 2 preguntas más. Si quieres, hacemos la tuya última y luego pondremos la última del público.
Vale, ok, pues así hago a una así más típica, pero que me apetece mucho hacerle. Eric, so we don't have much more time for many questions, but I am going to ask you something else, and then Sylvia, what is like to be an independent horror film creator in Canada? It's difficult. You have some helps of the government to make your films or to distribute your films, or how it works in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
No te escoltem, Toni.
Bueno, está muteado. Esta pregunta es, ¿cómo es un director de cine, un productor de cine independiente en Canadá? ¿Cómo funciona?
Well, actually, when you hear filmmaker talking about how they are doing films in their own country, it's always impossible. Everyone will say that. And actually it is, I think, for most of filmmakers in every country that tries to deal with specific kind of films, there is sometimes exception. Like you will have Titan coming out, which is suddenly is something, but that's exception. Cronenberg, which in Canada when he started wasn't like they even like changed the way film were founded in Canada because of his first films, just to say that it wasn't like per se easy, you know. So I think that it's normal if you do some types of film about certain subjects, it shouldn't be easy because it goes back to the transgressive and to not the mainstream nature of what you're doing. So that said, I'd say that apart from one film, everything I did in my 2 films actually, everything that I did in my whole short career for now is self-produced, self-financed by myself. So I work in the day like everyone, and I took that money to make films. The only 2 films that were financed was my mid-feature porn film, The Things from the Lake, but it was for a porn company, so they have the means. And the other film was Crépuscule, so my stop motion film, which was funded, but it wasn't easy to get the fund to make it because they didn't really understand what I was trying to do. So I'd say that it's normal that it is difficult for filmmakers in their own countries to try to tackle some subject because institution here in Canada we don't have kind of private fundings companies, not really exist. It's all public funded, like in other countries in the world. But what does mean is like it's taxpayers' money. So for sure, they don't want to do like a Gaspar Noé film tomorrow morning with a Quebec filmmaker that just, they're a bit more conservative on some choices. And there's a lot of people that create here. There's really a big pool of artists, like everywhere in the world again. But that means too that when we send projects to the government, they get like 80 projects that want fundings for a feature. They took 5, 6, 7, you know. So it's really, really hard. And most of the time, the jury will try to find something that will be in the middle ground, will please both sides, and they will try to stay, comment on dirait ça en anglais, to hit the middle, to please most of the people that they can. But that makes film for me that are in the middle, which you don't strongly react to because it's like, okay, it's fun, but that's it, you know. So actually, for independent filmmaker here, it's quite difficult. But we're not the only one in the world again, because there's some type of cinema that isn't isn't made to be pleasing. And I think that as long as that exists, we're okay, because even if it's difficult, that makes for some interesting movies, and that's the main part. And that's why, for me, at a point in my life, I said I will do my projects and self-finance it, because I will do whatever I want. So if I want to tackle a subject and go all in and do everything I want to do, I will be able to do it. And I won't have like to explain it to someone that doesn't understand, or try to cut some stuff because it wouldn't go through. Actually, last part of the question, sorry for the long answer, but in the last 6 years, well, 2 years ago, it was kind of over, but between 2014 and 2019, I tried to produce erotic comedy with horror elements in it. And it was a co-production with France and Belgium, Canada. And it was a feature length, and we had like really like good actors, and it was a cool project, big project, you know? But in the end, it didn't work, because when they were asking us for rewrite on the script, what they were asking is like, tame that down, don't do that, or that it does. And he said, well, it's not the same movie, and it's not the same thing, and you don't understand. It won't be interesting if we're trying to do just the regular stuff that everyone's doing. So it kind of fell apart. So that really traumatized me, in fact, because I've lost 5-6 years of my life. And also because it makes me realize that, it's not just being independent, because being independent is not just about money. It's about a way of thinking about film, about what kind of film and subjects you want to do, how you will treat the subjects, and how you think the viewer will react to these. So if you think your viewers are intelligent or not. And I think that's a big problem for most of the funding institution, that sometimes they think people are not intelligent enough to understand some stuff. So it's kind of my editorial part. But yeah, I think most of the time, like they don't have confidence in the public. So they will do that big mainstreams, boring, stupid films, or they will do that other film, these films d'auteur, like that are way too specific to please someone, because it's way too autorisant. But there's not the between, but there's no real margin to offer people something different. Because in the end, I think that founding institutions have their own problems, because they need to appeal to a majority, and sometimes they think the majority, is not intelligent enough to be able to like or understand different proposition. But that's not for me. You will ask me this question 3 years ago, I would have been bitter and a bit more angry. But now it's just like, that's life. Because what's important is making films, and making films the way we want. And it's not about money. It's just being able to express that to the end.
Esas cosas no las he escuchado porque el audio lleva un poco más, pero bueno. Aparte de OneFilm, personalmente, casi todo mi trabajo es autofinanciado. Solo ha habido películas que no he financiado, que son The Lake, The House of the Lake y
The Thing from the Lake.
The Thing from the Lake, perdón. The Thing from the Lake and Crépuscule. Y no es fácil en Canadá, por ejemplo, conseguir conseguir dinero, porque casi todo el público, y para los directores independientes como yo es difícil, pero por eso y por eso me autofinancio yo, porque así puedo hacer lo que yo quiero Y así otra anécdota, entre 2014 y 2019 intenté producir una comedia erótica con elementos de horror con un amigo en Bélgica. Pero al final no salió bien porque nos pedían que estuviéramos todo el tiempo haciendo cambios y al final no salió bien. Y por eso creo que no está bien cuando los directores intentan no tienen confianza en sus audiencias y por eso hacen estas películas tan grandes, tan así, que son muy aburridas. Y hace 2 años, si me hubieses hecho esta pregunta, estaría enfadado, pero hoy ya he aprendido que las cosas son así para los directores independientes como nosotros.
Gracias, Tony. La última pregunta, Eric, the last question, Eric. It's from our friend Kisok. Eric, your cinema is definitely different and out of the box. What influences or other authors, maybe some quite unknown, would you recommend to people to keep an eye on? Thank you.
Vale, la última pregunta es, Eric, tu cine es muy diferente, es muy alternativo. ¿Y qué directores y qué películas nos podrías recomendar para que les ayudemos un poco?
I'm quite old school when it comes to movie. We talk about silent film, but one of the filmmaker I like very, very much is Joseph Losey, who did The Servant, obviously. So the name of my band is based on that film. But a lot of film that deals on these kind of opposition between desires and respectability and what is repressed. So really love this film. I'd say my favorite filmmaker right now, and it's not like something really underground, no way, but it's Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, I love everything that he does. I think that's one of the best we have right now in the world, and I can't wait for his new film that's coming out next month. But I think that he always has something to propose on a cinematic level, so it's important for me. That said, if you want to go into more underground territories, I'd say that one of the places that I've found is the most interesting to see what will be upcoming trends in films. Like 10 years later, you start to see these kind of stuff going on, is experimental cinema. That's where everything, you go see an experimental film or short film program, and there's some experiment in that you will see in mainstream cinema 10 years after. And everyone will say, oh, wow, it revolutionized the way we think the cinema. No, not really. But it's just like in the mainstream movie feature length, suddenly we see effects that we weren't used to. So I'd say everything that is underground, experimental film festival, they're really interesting stuff going on. There's a lot of people, so too many names to go around. But you take, for example, in Montreal, in Quebec, we have Frédéric Maheu, a friend of mine who's doing like experimental feature. It's really art stuff. Like his last film was about people showing themselves doing drugs on the internet. And it was a documentary film using footages from that. It's really interesting. It's amazing, but art stuff and really weird stuff. Carl Lemieux is another one here in Quebec that is really it's really interesting. So there's a lot of these kind of filmmakers I think deserve or worth the time you spend off, because that's where you find new ways of filming. And especially if you're aiming to narrative cinema, like I'm doing narrative cinema, for me, hanging out and loving experimental cinema and the film form, that's where that's how I came with ideas for my narrative films that are necessarily always narrative. Sometime more, sometime less, depends. But I think that's how we must think about film, is that we must think of them about experiences And if we think about experiences, we think about our own way of looking at the world, so our own experiences. And we should, as a filmmaker, try to give a glimpse to the viewer at how we experience the world, how we see it, but always trying to always think that everyone is brilliant, because everyone can understand everyone and everything. And if you do that, we'll work, I think. Don't have many names to give you more than that, but that's a couple.
Bueno, respecto a mis gustos, yo soy muy de la vieja escuela, pero os voy a recomendar a José Miguel. Vale,
Yeah.
Vale. Porque en sus películas uno de sus temas muy interesante es la posición entre el deseo y el arrepentimiento, creo que era. Y es uno, no, perdón, es uno de mis directores de cine favoritos. Otro nombre que también os puedo decir es Paul Thomas Anderson. Es uno de los mejores y no puedo me muero de ganas de ver su nueva película que sale el mes que viene. Y también os podría recomendar como Éric Falardeau y también experimental y
Carl Lemieux. So it's Carl Lemieux. Yeah. It's okay.
Sí,
Yeah.
es un poco mal.
Yeah.
Que también su temática es muy experimental, muy alternativa, con cosas muy raras. Y pues no son muchos nombres, pero bueno, algo.
Muchas gracias, Tony. And thank you very much, Eric, for being so nice for us tonight. Well, for us it's tonight. I know for you it's afternoon. Yeah.
I've put myself in the mood with you, so I said it's tonight. So I'm drinking a wine. But
I'm working.
It's me, thank you. It's me who thank the festival, and it's really glad to be part of this edition. And who thanks everyone who are watching right now and who's there with us. Thank you.
Sí, i moltes gràcies també als espectadors. Voldria també que es despedís el José.
Sí, moltes gràcies a tots. And Eric, I hope you see you again very soon. And remember, salut.
Et force Canut. But I forget the last part, which is
Yeah. Està clar que la cultura no s'atura a TerrorMolins. Trascendemos fronteras. Pues esto es todo, amigos. Nos vemos en la próxima edición para eventos. Con este evento hemos terminado con la celebración de las 40 ediciones. Y bueno, esperamos teneros físicamente en la próxima edición, next edition, on live. Y muchas gracias Tony por la traducción y buenas noches.
Merci.
Buenas noches.
Bye.
Bye.